Hello everybody and welcome back to the Jake's RC Stuff channel and to a really shitty video that I thought I wouldn't have to make. But this is going to be a talky video, so the reason why the screen's black is because it is. So feel free to do stuff in other tabs while you listen or whatever, but yeah, there is going to be no video for this. But as I say, unfortunately my Flexinvoations RV8 60E is currently in a bin bag. It's been a long time since I really totaled a plane, especially one that isn't FPV. It's years and years. Possibly the last one, actually, where it was really dramatic, was a Seagull aircraft Bling. I was flying my dad's, and the fuselage split in two in midair. Not much you could do that. Both bits just fell to the ground. But the RV8, so I do a maneuver where, well, let me start from the beginning. So go to fly it, first flight of the day, only flight of the day. Take off, go to do a stall turn, and the rudder wasn't working. My fault. I'd sort of rushed out there in a gap in other people flying. So I landed it, no problem. The rudder was straight. I just kind of pressed on top of the flex gyro, I've forgotten what it's called, and the rudder started working. So I thought, oh, not great. I don't particularly like the cabling in the plane. It seems quite cheap. Maybe it's to save weight, but I don't really like it. So I took off, flew again, did various things, slow rolling circuits, hover in front of me. I then do a low pass, and I'm going to do a loop to landing. So basically, fly past myself super low, full throttle, sort of brings it over on itself, so like a half a loop inverted. I then go to sort of half throttle while it flies past me. I then shut the throttle off, full flap, do the other half of the loop so it's level again, and do a landing. I go to do that, fly past myself slowly, I think, quite low, full throttle, half a loop, go down to half throttle, and just as it flies past me upside down, shut the throttle off and put full flap. But what happens is it goes to about a quarter throttle, so halfway of what I'd advised it to do, and no flap, and just keeps going. I hold the radio up in the air, start sort of just stirring the right stick so that I can see when stuff comes back, and it just goes going and going and going. Due to the throttle off, the nose starts dipping. Right before it hits the floor, I do get it back, but it's enough if I'm stirring the stick about, going a full revolution once a second. So it may have been a second and a half, 2 seconds before it hit the floor. And as I say, it's the first time in a while that it's been a plane that's not FPV, and that I've seen the crash, and heard the noise and everything. When you're FPVing, usually it's the floor and you get snow and you might hear a little crunch somewhere off in the distance. But no, we're actually watching this in and watching the odd bit of foam fly up and stuff. So I got over it, quite kind of annoyed. I kicked the undercarriage across the field, but the fuselage is completely ruined. So to replace that, because I've looked on Aerobatex in the UK, the distributors, that is fuselage, cowl, canopy, possibly an undercarriage, because that was bent and twisted, I think, even before I kicked it. I will do a video where I actually look at the pieces, because I need to work out if it's repairable or not. But yeah, that's how the crash happened. I'm not going to go into exactly what's damaged and broken and stuff like that, because that will be in a separate video where I try and work out what bits I'm going to need to buy, is it cost effective, things like that. That'll be in a following video, don't know exactly when. So to go through what I think has gone wrong, because obviously it was a lockout. I know people say it was a lockout. That's normally right before it lands and it tip stalls and they go, oh, lockout. But no, this was me, radio up in the air, stirring sticks, nothing happening. It's clear what's happened. And before I get into the next bit, because I don't know yet, and this will be some of the investigation I do when I actually get the bits out of the shed when I want to look at the plane again, I'm not sure if it's something to do with Flexinvoations parts that have gone wrong, something to do with Futaba, because my transmitter and receiver provider, 16SZ, and one of the FHSS receivers, which I'm a bit meh on now, or it was me, and I'll get onto that in a minute. I don't think it was the speed controller at fault, because there is a separate BEC, and the speed control didn't shut down because the motor was still on. I need to check if I set a throttle failsafe or not, because that might lean towards more of a Beck fault, because if I have the failsafe set so the throttle should go to 0 and it didn't, that to me seems more like the receiver just had no power suddenly, which would be more the Beck. But I don't think it was a speaker controller at fault. I'm probably going to chuck it away because it did receive a knock in the crash. The only electronics that I can see immediately that are knackered, because the motor seems fine, is the battery that was in it. It was a 6S5000 Turnigy, but to be fair, it's the one that had been near the fire, it was a dangerous battery this, of the Viper jet that nearly burnt down. So it was like smouldered and some of the heat shrink had cracked and stuff. So it was my worst 6S5000 battery that was smashed and bananaed all over the floor. But yeah, that's outside, as I'm sure you can imagine, with all the cells quite swollen now. So yeah, so I think it was either a Beck that failed, but it wasn't doing a lot at the time. Like, by the sounds of it, it failed before I even asked for flaps, and at the time no servos were really involved, it was just flying level. It was on low gyro, so there may have been something happening, but it wasn't like under a load of load. So I don't think it's the Beck somehow, but even so, I'd replace it. I'd replace the speaker controller. It's in line with the throttle lever, which I don't like. I'll probably get a new speaker controller and Beck. Could be the flight controller, the Flex, whatever it's called, the Armor 8, whatever it's called. Could be that. That's just not sending. No. Because the throttle went into the receiver. Okay, so that kind of rules out. You see, I am going through things in my head as I talk to you. So basically what's left then is the receiver, the transmitter, or me, and I'll get to the me bit somewhat through this. So the equipment involved 16SZ for Taba radio, and the FHSS, so not the fast stuff, but the TFHSS or something like that, the cheaper receivers. It's supposed to be full range, they're just cheaper. They're half the price of the fast and fastest stuff, which I've got in that, and I think the FlexJet. So I need to check that, because I might want to get rid of both of these receivers. The one that's been in the plane will be binned, and then I might just sell the one in the FlexJet. I didn't have any other planes, because the only planes I had with me that were on that 16 radio was my Kiki Yak, the RV8, the FlexJet, and the Avanti, and I didn't want to risk any of them on what could be a faulty transmitter. I don't know yet. So next time we go up, I'll take something like the Visionaire. It is using fast, not FHS or fastest, which are in all those other stuff, but it could be a test. The only thing where I think I could have gone wrong is receiver and aerial placement. So on the receiver I had one wire facing front to back and one left to right, so there was none pointing up and down. But that is something that you sort of have to make a decision on. You know, there isn't, you can almost do having 3 aerials, as daft as it sounds. You can have one front back, one left right, and one up and down. One of the good things I will say about Spectrum and their satellite systems, in lots of big planes, we do have multiple receivers. For example, my dad has an old biplane that we're doing as more a test bed that has some FHSS receivers. We're not too bothered about swapping them out because it's running through a power box, so it'll have diversity between the 2 receivers that are in there. So yeah, they were like that, and also the antenna on my radio I forgot to point upwards, so it's pointing sideways. It wasn't pointing down; it was just pointing sideways. So it's in line with the radio, so that when it was stored, I forgot to point it upwards. But if the plane's upside down and there was an extent, and it's flying sort of sideways to me, so it's flying left to right of me, but there's an aerial pointing front to back in the plane, which means there's an aerial pointing left to right of me, and the aerial on my radio is pointing left to right to me. They are, I forgot what it's called now. Basically, the aerials are are parallel with each other, which is good. They're in polarization. That's what I'm looking for. The only thing is you get a lot of signal at the top of the aerial, so to me, pointing to my right. You get still quite a lot, but not as much to the bottom of the aerial, if you like, which was pointing to my left. there is a bit of a dead zone in the middle, and this plane locked out as it flew past me, which is when it would have been in the lowest signal. Did take what must have been 3, 4, 5 seconds, probably 5 seconds, to relink before it hit the floor. But I do have this horrible suspicion that it was because of aerial placements. More than anything, the aerial being on its side. And also it was quite close. I think, further away it may have been all right. Yeah, I mean, one of the criticisms I will have for Futaba is the fact that they don't have any voice on the radio, at least on the 16, and they don't seem to have RSSI telemetry. For all I knew, if I'd have been flying on my Radio Master, for example, he may have been telling me low RSSI critical or RSSI low the whole flight. Futaba, I don't know. With FreeSky, I'd have known to land it and check what was going off. So yeah, I don't really know. It's fixable, but it is going to have to be purchasing new parts. I did a rough tally, and it was about half the price of the plane to get the new stuff. And I'm not sure what they have in stock or not at Aerobatex, or whether they just order all the bits in for me, and what shipping had been, all that other stuff. But to be honest with you, that's the same price as the 10 size RV8. And I was kind of like, well, for now, do you want to get that? But I don't know. Ultimately, I need to get the bits out. I'd say the fuselage is dead. I basically need to check the tail. I know the rudder's alright. The tail and the wings, because the wings, one wing was slightly lower than when it hit the ground. So the one that actually hit the ground, the leading edge is split open. It's a little bit bent, the wing, but I actually think that's more fixable than the other wing, where it broke on the RV8. You might have better seen the build videos if you've not seen this, or look at the instruction book. There's a bit of metal that goes out the wing into the fuselage that you screw into, and that's broken out the wooden former in the wing. It's a foam plane, but it does have wooden formers in it. And that's going to be a bugger to repair, more than the wing. So I think what I'm basically going to do is give a look over, check electronics, see what to do. Probably replace the receiver, maybe make it a test receiver. Replace the speaker controller and beck anyway, because it has had a knock, and I don't like the beck being in line with the throttle. If the speaker controller sets on fire... what was good with the Viper jet I had was I could land it because the beck was soldered onto the connector end that connected to the battery. So even though the end of the main motor wires were hanging about in a breeze because there was no speed controller left, the heat hadn't got down the wires enough to melt the beck off, so I was able to land it on servos, or from the power of the beck got running to the servos. And also just antenna placement being improved, but obviously all that stuff's going to have to come out to go in the new one anyway. So ultimately we'll see, because I think by the time I buy a new wing panel, which I think is another 80 or so quid, I'm at 400, I might as well buy a new one at that point, which is annoying because I don't have that much money at the minute. I've obviously not had a job for a while, and I now do have a job, which is why these videos are a bit more scattered. Well, not necessarily on here, but on my other channel are a bit more scattered because I don't have as much time. But, I don't particularly want to be sticking £610 on a credit card right now. It's really annoying. I'd be less annoyed if I dumb-thumbed it and crashed it that way. So I'd be just like, oh shit, but then move on with it. But it's almost like I couldn't have done anything. I know there's the fact I forgot about putting the antenna pointed up and things like that. But it's not like I could have saved the plane. When I got within a certain distance of the ground, the fact that I was on low rate is what, it was dead. I think even if it had been on high rate, it would have still splattered the ground hard. When I do the video, you'll see the damage that's done to it. It's really not a 50-50 on if you can repair the fuselage. The fuselage is dead. Cowl is snapped in half, but it's squidged. It's very light foam. It's not high density. Even the fuselage behind the canopy is bowed. It's a bit banana-y. Canopy itself is banana-y, and a lump taken out the back of it. So one wing split open, the other one's had the secure bit of metal ripped out of it. So I don't really know. Again, even if I bought a new one, would I replace the speed controller? Possibly. just as a safety net, or maybe even just add in a second mech and have redundancy that way. But yeah, just to tell you that was obviously crap. We then had some issues afterwards with other people at the site, so I didn't fly again. I was tempted to fly. My dad had a plane to test fly that had been on a different radio. I had FPV stuff I could have flown, but just kind of bleh after a few things. So that was it. Again, whether it be next video or not, I will show you the damage and we'll go through and try and see what the situation is in terms of what works, what doesn't work, see if we can find a fault. You know, I might plug it in and do a range test. I didn't do a range test there and then just because I was peed off and not thinking, but I'll try some range tests. Put the plane and the aerial in the same sort of formation. My dad can help me with that. I'll go for a bit of a walk, see if the range is much less than it being the right way up and the area in the right place on the radio. But we'll see. We'll cover that all in future videos, but I need to get a video out for this and other stuff that's just bleh. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, you heartless bastard, you can like, feel free to comment. I may stay away from the comments a little bit because they could be a bit spicy. But subscribe if you want to see some more, and we'll show you the bits at some point, and we'll see if we can resurrect my original RV8 or if it's a new one. So thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.